Hey, LarkenRose here. Advocates of political authoritarian power always describe the agendas they want using vague euphemisms and fluffy rhetoric that is usually very non-specific. This is true of Democrats and Republicans, the left and right, and everybody in between, in every form. There's a reason for that, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Let me throw in an example. Reasonable gun control. Just look at the news. There's a shooting over here and some sad thing happened over here. Somebody got killed. We need reasonable gun control. You couldn't get much more vague than that. What the hell are you talking about? Like, specifically, what does that mean? Well, the title of this video is Zoom In. And that's because I highly suggest whenever you're talking about any political anything, any legislative agenda, any law you support, any law somebody else supports, drag the discussion down to specifics and reality. For example, somebody on the left may, and they're not even doing this on purpose, they speak in fluffy terms because they think in fluffy terms. So they think, just reasonable gun control, so bad things don't happen. A lot of them literally don't think any more specifically than that. And if you ask them, well, what do you mean? What gun? Well, maybe a background check. Okay. And okay, so you check their background. Then what? Well, maybe we don't give guns to... then they can try to think it through and see if they actually know anything. But if you zoom in on a real-world example, you get the direct real-world results of gun control in Waco, Texas, where the federal government prolongedly, if that's a word, tortured and terrorized and then murdered 80-some, or was it over 90? I forget. Men, women, children, babies, old folks, based on a technical violation of reasonable gun control laws. Somebody was alleged to have a thing, not a machine gun, but was alleged, and wasn't alleged to have threatened or hurt anybody, was alleged to have a piece of stuff that could be used to make a semi-automatic firearm into a fully automatic firearm. Now, most Democrats don't even know what those terms mean. They think we need to ban machine guns. Okay, that happened 70 years ago, unless you get a special license. Oh, well, something. Scary looking guns. Okay, you don't even know what your own laws are for. So this is either you pull a trigger once and it goes bang and one bullet comes out, and you can go bang, 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 pull the trigger lots of times and lots of bullets. That's semi-automatic. Fully automatic is you pull the trigger and hold it, and lots of bullets come out, bang, 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 right in a row without having to repeat pull. That's semi-automatic versus fully automatic. Somebody was alleged to have a piece of stuff that could make a semi-automatic firearm behave like a fully automatic firearm. And for that, the ATF did a violent invasion of this private place that a bunch of religious people lived in, that they hadn't threatened their neighbors. They got along fine with the neighborhood. They got along fine with local law enforcement even. But thanks to reasonable gun control, there was prolonged torture. If you want a glimpse into what happened, you can start with Rules of Engagement, the documentary that came out. A lot more has come out since then. But go watch Rules of Engagement and you'll see the real world zoomed in reality of reasonable gun control. And it was profoundly evil. And it got lots of people murdered who hadn't threatened or harmed anybody. And that's just freaking evil. That's the reality of your reasonable gun control. I could also get into the story of what happened at Ruby Ridge in Idaho, but you can look that up with the Weaver family. And a mother being murdered on her front porch by being shot in the face by federal agents while holding her baby on the front porch. She wasn't armed. And other people got shot there too and killed. Why? Because a guy was entrapped into selling an undercover Fed, allegedly. I don't even know if this actually happened. The allegations, this is what the federal government says was the justification for a prolonged siege and terrorism and then murder. It was that he was alleged to have sold a shotgun whose barrel length was a little bit shorter than allowed by federal law. So if you looked at it, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that and a perfectly legal shotgun. So there's your reasonable gun control. And once again, people who hadn't threatened or harmed anyone got terrorized and tortured and then murdered. There's a zoomed in real life example of your reasonable gun control. But today's video isn't just about gun control. That's just an example of how the left does it. The right does it too. And all I ask, at least to begin with, all I ask is that people actually zoom in on the reality. And the thing is, what that accomplishes is most decent people who aren't fascists or lunatics get uncomfortable if when they zoom in on the reality of what they condone turns out to be kind of evil. Which it is. If you're a Democrat or a Republican, you advocate evil. And when you zoom in on the reality instead of talking in fluff, well, we need a war on drugs because we got to get these dangerous drugs off the street. Okay, so politicians write something and then there were drugs on the street and they dematerialized. Okay, that sounds awesome. Okay, but what actually happens? Well, what actually happens is violent psychopaths with guns initiate violence against people for selling plants to willing customers. And you can see individual cases. You can zoom in. Oh, here's where some drug Nazis kicked somebody's door down and shot him in front of his family because he was alleged to have some plants that the federal government said he wasn't supposed to have. That's the reality. If you zoom in real life, that's the reality. Well, this applies to pretty much any law. And so I'm going to move this over to immigration, since that's such a hot topic these days. Because people who aren't psychos, if they zoom in, they have no trouble recognizing the difference between moral and immoral. But when they're off in vague rhetoric land, oh, there's all these illegal aliens. They don't have faces. They aren't actually people. It's just this category of, they're definitely brown, mostly, and they're scary, because I keep hearing scary words. So these faceless, nameless, non-specific, scary brown people, well, we need laws, because I don't want a bunch of faceless, nameless, scary brown people in my neighborhood, so we better have border controls, and we better be deporting those illegals. Okay, what happens when you zoom in? What's the reality of that? Well, could be a bunch of different things. Now, I'll start on the side that people are all worried about. If you zoom in, you're looking at the whole country, and you zoom in some city, and there's some illegal immigrant who's actually a violent criminal piece of crap. The fact that he's an immigrant or not, that's not what matters. The fact that he's a violent psycho, that's what matters. Let's put a few of them. Now there's a gang. There's a gang of MS-13, whatever. There's a gang of people. They're not legally allowed to be here. And you zoom in and, 3 or 4 violent thugs are about to attack somebody in a back alley. They're about to attack some woman in a back alley. Does anybody have any problem with, I hope she whips out a gun or somebody else is there and whips out a gun and shoots the bastards so they're dead and they don't get to attack her? Would anybody object to it? Now, there may be some people who are like, well, is there a way to stop them that isn't quite that nasty? Okay, but does anybody no, totally let them victimize that person? Nobody. The Democrats don't believe that. The Republicans don't believe it. Now, the Republicans pretend that the Democrats believe it, and then the Democrats pretend that Republicans believe other things. But when you zoom in and give a specific example, almost nobody is going to say, I'd be against anything that stops those particular violent thugs from attacking that particular victim. Pretty much everybody with a brain and a conscience would say, yeah, they should be stopped. Probably by any means necessary, including deadly force. Most Republicans will say that. Most Democrats would say that. I would say that. Absolutely. If I was there, I'd be all in favor of shooting them myself if they're going to violently attack some innocent person. Absolutely. The weird thing is, when I describe that to people who say, well, I'm concerned about scary illegal immigrants, what's your solution? And I say, well, the solution is use defensive force against actual aggressors, which literally has nothing to do with whether they're here legally or not. It's not like, that street gang, they're allowed to be here. They were born here, so I'm going to let them victimize her. Nope, going to shoot them too. Just as fast, just as much in the head. Because their legal status and whether politicians over there said they're allowed to set foot anywhere on this dirt, what the hell does that have to do with whether it's righteous and legitimate to stop them from attacking an innocent person? And by the way, if they were citizens and their intended target was an illegal alien, they should also be stopped just as much, using the same force. And if you zoom down to an individual case, anybody with a brain recognizes, yeah, that's just such a basic description of morality. If there are violent aggressors attacking an innocent person, stop them by any means necessary. Does anybody have trouble with that? I mean, some people will go, well, not by any means necessary. Okay, arguing with pacifists, that's a different thing. But even most Democrats, most Republicans are going to say, well, yeah, of course, in that case, use any force. And yet the Republicans will say, if you're not for deporting, you must be for that victimization to happen. You must be in favor of those violent thugs attacking that woman. What a stupid argument. What a stupid claim. Utterly idiotic. Nobody is. And it's absolutely intellectually dishonest to try to take all the Democrats who are hypocritically complaining about immigration controls, because the Democrats do that too. They do the deportation. They had the ICE bullshit fascist border Nazis too. Biden did it. Obama did it. Clinton did it. So they pretend they're different, which they're not. But any decent human being, including a Democrat, would say, yeah, I want that innocent person protected from those people. Nobody's saying, well, if they're illegal aliens, you should totally let them. Now, the politicians absolutely like that sort of thing to happen because they want the conflict. They don't give a shit about normal people. They want the conflict and the strife. They want us hating each other. So the only people who actually might cheer about those guys attacking that innocent victim are Republican politicians and Democrat politicians, because both of their shitty agendas are fed by that divisive thing. Because when that crime happens, the Republicans are like, great, we can use this to try to back up our bullshit immigration control bills and agendas and shit. And then the Democrats are like, oh, we can use this to try to ban guns if there were guns involved. Not the voters. The voters on both sides, for the most part, mean well. I mean, they're indoctrinated, they're clueless, they don't even know what their own belief systems are, because they don't even zoom in on their own beliefs enough to see what they're condoning. But yeah, the politicians are absolutely evil enough that they want that evil crap to happen. And every once in a while, they totally get caught proving it. Like, oh, we want to end this gun violence. Is that why the ATF literally gave guns to the Mexican drug cartels? Because they super duper want to end the drug-related violence? Is that why the entire Joint Chiefs of Staff signed off on a plan for the U.S. military to do false flag operations in this country against Americans to create a completely unnecessary war? Operation Northwoods, look it up. It's not a conspiracy. They're declassified documents showing they absolutely did that. Yes, people in power are psychopathic and evil enough that they don't at all mind innocent people suffering horribly and dying if it serves their political agenda. But let's rewind back to the zooming in. So in that situation, all right, we zoomed in on that particular example. Some thugs about to attack an innocent woman. Every Democrat and Republican or anything else with a brain is going to say, yeah, they should be stopped, including by force if necessary. And most would say by any means necessary. If you have to shoot them, if that's the only way to stop them, then shoot them. Yep, and I totally agree. So if any Republican is like, if you oppose our bullshit immigration stuff, it must be because you want people victimized. Nope. I want potential victims armed to the teeth. And if anybody attacked them, regardless of their immigration status, I want the aggressor to lose very, very badly. And depending on what he was trying to do, if it's somebody like stealing $5, okay, maybe don't blow his head off. If it's a murderer, if it's a rapist, if it's a gang of them, kill them, make them be dead. Hey, Republicans, remember when you pretended to be rugged badasses who believed in self-defense and the Second Amendment? Why don't you advocate that instead of whining to Big Daddy government to solve the problem by initiating violence against zillions of other people? And that's where we're going to change the topic and zoom in on a different example. Now we're zooming out of that city, and don't worry, the thugs got shot by somebody. They're dead. The woman's safe. She's lightly traumatized. She's scared. She ran home. She's safe. The end. End scene. Now we're zooming in somewhere else. And there's this guy in Florida, in Arizona, whatever, who was born in Mexico. He tried to go through the process, and it takes a while, but he knows people up here who are like, hey, I have a job for you. Like a few friends of ours up here, family, you have connections up there. You can come up, you can do this job. We have a landscaping business, a roofing business, whatever it is. You can come up here, you can earn money to help take care of your family, and you get paid under the table and stuff. So, yeah, want to do that? And he's a nice guy. He's not a violent gang member. He's just somebody who works hard and feeds his family, and he's like nice and friendly and hardworking. And I've met a huge number of Mexicans who perfectly fit that description. In fact, having been to Mexico a bunch of times, I can say, generally speaking, even though I don't speak their language, I find Mexicans to be, on the whole, way more open and friendly, even with some weird gringo who can't even speak their damn language and comes to their country. None of them are saying, you learn Spanish if you're going to come to our country. They're all, hi, how you doing? Perfectly friendly. Of course, yes, there are nasty people there too. I'm talking about general patterns. People I don't know and don't speak the language of in Mexico, on general, I find to be more polite and nicer to random me as a stranger than the average American in the average American city. It's just my experience. So zooming in on that case, where the guy didn't threaten anybody, he didn't harm anybody, but he did step over that line without the permission of the damn ruling class, federal government, Congress. Well, they didn't give him a piece of paper saying he's allowed to be here. So he's here, and he's working, and he's being productive, and he's peacefully coexisting just fine. He's a nice guy. And then ICE shows up, because some bitter, racist asshole neighbor called and said, I think some of the people next door might be illegal aliens. So they went all brown shirt and called in the Nazis, and the Gestapo shows up. Are you Schwederschwederma? So guys with machine guns show up at this guy's house. Not because he threatened anybody, not because he harmed anybody. I haven't looked this up, but I'm under the impression that just being here illegally is like a misdemeanor. Like, it's like a fine. It's not even like a real crime. But they will show up with guns to forcibly kidnap him to deport him. So let's zoom in on that case. Okay, Mr. Republican and Mr. Democrat, are you okay with this happening? With guns being pointed in this guy's face? Nice guy, has friends here, he's been here for years. He's been productive, he hasn't hurt anybody, he hasn't threatened anybody, he has a bunch of his family here. Are you okay with that guy? Now, I wish it was a real guy and I could give him a face and a name and you could see him and I could go, here he is. Are you okay with those Nazi shits pointing a gun in this guy's face, perfectly sweet, hardworking, nice guy, just because he didn't have the permission of the goddamn ruling class to set foot on this piece of dirt? Are you okay with that? Now, most Republicans, even they will be like, well, you should come here legally and blah, 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 blah. It's not what I fucking asked. Are you okay with violence being used against that guy? Middle of the day, suddenly fascists show up and violently kidnap him at gunpoint and haul him out of the country. Are you okay with that? Because when you zoom in on that case, even a bunch of Republicans who make wishy-washy excuses for their wishy-washy immigration controls, if they have a soul at all or a conscience at all, they get uncomfortable because you zoomed in on the evil that they actually advocate, and they don't want to see the evil. That's why the right and the left and everybody in politics always describes their positions in vague fluff. Reasonable gun control, or laws to get these drugs off our streets. Or, oh, we want free housing and this and that and the other thing, funded by what? Oh, violently robbing everybody in the name of taxation. Huh, you didn't mention that part. So, Mr. Democrat, if we zoom in on somebody working his butt off to try to feed his family and keep his little business afloat, and you're taxing him into poverty and destroying his life, and he's looking at his bills and he's all stressed out and he's thinking about killing himself, and he's looking how much the IRS says he owes. And yes, the IRS literally has procedures to deal with people who seem suicidal about tax issues because it happens so fucking often. And you Democrats advocate that. Of course, Republicans advocate it too, but you advocate it even more. You want to zoom in on that case? That guy trying to feed his family, that guy trying to run a business, and he's getting robbed blind. By the way, if you've never been self-employed and you don't know what a Schedule C and a Schedule SE are, shut the fuck up about taxation. People who actually try to be productive on their own get robbed into oblivion, and that's how you pay for the free food and free housing and free this, by violent extortion and destroying people's lives. So yeah, zoom in on that, Mr. and Mrs. Democrat, and tell me if you're okay with that guy being stressed out to the point that he buys life insurance and then kills himself just to cover the fucking taxes so you can feel good about generously giving away what isn't yours and what had to be stolen from your neighbors through the threat of violence by the IRS. You okay with that? No, you don't want to look that close. You don't want to zoom in just like the Republicans don't want to zoom in on actual real-world cases of the authoritarian shit they condone. Because if you zoom in, your conscience might kick in, and you might go, this is really bad. That person shouldn't be robbed and his life destroyed. He shouldn't be stressed out by a government that demands $1 gajillion so they can, pay for 1/10 of a bomb to drop on some random person over in Afghanistan or Syria or... That's not okay. So whatever you do, don't zoom in and see the real world results of the shit that you condone, because then you might stop condoning it. Just like if the Republicans zoomed in on the real world examples of the authoritarian shit they condone, whether you're talking about the bullshit war on drugs or their immigration border fetish bullshit, and you zoom in on an actual individual case and go, oh, okay, this time we're not talking about nasty, scary person. We're talking about just a decent human being who happened to be born on a different piece of dirt. And because of that accident of birth, where he was born on that side of the line, and this other guy was born on this side of the line, and they're both hanging out and having a grand time and working hard and being responsible, you're calling in the jackbooted thugs to kidnap him by force, drag him away from his family and friends, and send him to a country he hasn't been to in a decade. That's the reality of what you're advocating, and you don't want to look at it, just like the Democrats don't want to look at it. Because there are 0 people who vote who actually all the way want to zoom in and admit the real world specifics of what it is that they condone. And it's pathetic, and it's cowardly. And it's what happened in every single tyrannical regime in the world throughout all of history. Oh, this guy with a funny mustache says he's going to make everything right. He sympathizes with the hard stuff we've been going through, and he's going to make this country great again. And he's going to, he needs lots of power, and he's going to control a bunch of things. and to limit what people can do and tax the hell out of people and stuff. But he loves us, and let's not look too closely at what he's going to do. Did you think I meant Hitler? Because I also meant Stalin. Could have meant Mao, but he didn't have a mustache. Asians aren't big on mustaches. Because genetics. Could have meant him too. Could have meant almost any dictator and tyrant you've ever heard of. Because they all rise to power by feeding the people pleasant-sounding fluff and making sure the people don't zoom in enough to go, wait a minute, these lovely sounding ideals that you say you're going to accomplish, is this how you're doing it? By using violence against this guy and that guy? That guy over there, okay, he's a violent piece of crap. Fine with violence being used against him to stop him from hurting other people. That's fine. Government violence, normal violence, like normal people using force to stop him. Okay, I don't care about him. We can all zoom in on that case and go, well, he was violent and attacking somebody. I hope somebody stops him by force. But all those other cases of real people in real life being on the receiving end of violence, and every Republican and every Democrat is just fine with that as long as they don't have to look at it. As long as they don't have to zoom in on the real world results of the shit that they condone. And I got a front row seat to a number of zoomed in real world results when I was in a cage for a year for not paying tribute to the federal extortion racket. And by the way, speaking of taxes and the left, I was prosecuted by prosecutors appointed by a Republican in a mock trial presided over by a Republican judge. Almost everybody was involved was appointed by Republicans. So Republicans pretending they're against taxation and destroying people's lives from not paying tribute to the ruling class. Shut the fuck up. Yes, you do. Yes, you are. That's the monstrosity that you helped to create and you helped to continue, and you just don't want to look too closely at it. And now we're seeing more and more stories come out. Apparently there was a Trump supporter who was going from, I think it was New Mexico into Arizona. He's a citizen. He was born here. He went from New Mexico into Arizona. By the way, those are in the same country. If you went to public schooling, you might not know this. New Mexico is a state. Mexico is down here. New Mexico is a state in the United States. A Trump supporter was going from New Mexico to Arizona, and he was stopped by the border Nazis, not at the border. And then he was forcibly kidnapped and held for 10 days, despite the fact that he's a U.S. citizen. That's a real world result of the stupid shit that the border brigade is advocating. And the funny thing is, the victim of that was one of those people who supported Trump. Now, apparently, he's having second thoughts. Maybe cheering for Nazi checkpoints everywhere isn't such a great thing, because maybe normal, real people have to be subjected to that. It's like the TSA, we're doing these measures to stop terrorism. Funny, I've seen a lot of people at airports treated like criminals and being stopped and harassed and sexually assaulted in the name of safety, have all their stuff rummaged through. There's no warrant, there's no probable cause. We're just going to treat you all like criminals. You know what I've never seen? A terrorist that was caught doing that. You know what's never happened? A terrorist being caught by doing that. So if you zoom in, instead of listening, we have these measures to prevent terrorism. That sounds so lovely. Okay, zoom in. What actually happens? Whole bunch of people who aren't terrorists are being treated like criminals and treated like livestock. Oh, gee whiz. Is that what you wanted, Republicans? Because that's what you actually got in the real world, because you fell for the fluffy sounding bullshit. Now, I could go back and forth all day, because this is true of every political agenda. Because every political agenda will take some example that you're scared of. There was a school shooting. There was an illegal alien who did some horrible thing over here. There's this scary thing. There's poverty. There's sickness. There's this. There's that. The other thing. You better give us a ton of power over lots and lots of people. In fact, you better give us power over everything so we can protect you from those bad things. And then you zoom in on the reality in case after case after case after case, and you realize, oh, holy crap, what they really wanted this power for was to treat all of us like livestock. It had nothing to do with the school shooting. It had nothing to do with the gang members. It had nothing to do with wanting to end drug violence. The war on drugs only has made that worse and way more violent. None of it ever has anything to do with preventing the problems that you're scared of, which is why they always talk in fluff and they never want you to zoom in on the reality, the real world results of the shit you fell for. If you're a Republican or a Democrat or a political libertarian that's not libertarian, or a moderate or a communist or a fascist, whatever, this trick is not new. So if you're going to discuss these things, I just ask that you zoom in and talk about real world specifics. Be personal, literal, and specific in describing what it is that you condone. Or you're just a coward. Before you do that, you might be able to claim ignorance. Oh, I just never thought about it that much. Yeah, welcome to the club. That's almost every voter. But grow a spine enough to zoom in and go, okay, this thing I'm cheering for, what does it actually do? Literally and specifically, what does this law make happen to real people in the real world? And, I interrupted myself when I mentioned that I was in prison for a year for not paying tribute to the ruling class. Got sidetracked about Republicans doing that almost entire thing. Because I got to see I was at minimum security federal prison in Waymart, Pennsylvania. Canaan. Yeah, because that's the promised land. That's literally what the place is called, Canaan. The irony of that. But I got to see up close and personal lots and lots of zoomed in, actual real stories of people who weren't there for being violent. They weren't there for fraud. There were a few people there for fraud. But most of the people there were in a cage because they sold stuff to willing customers. Willing adult customers, not the cliche of, they're selling drugs to 8-year-olds in the playground. It's like, yeah, that happens pretty much never. No, it's selling to adults. And I got to see, and a lot of these guys are like not that educated. A lot of them are from the inner cities and grew up with single moms and stuff like that. And of course, there's a whole range. There's like 100 people there. There's the whole range of absolute jerks to totally nice people. And, mostly it's in between. But mostly it didn't register to me as any worse than the general public. It's just, there are people with dumb beliefs and there are people who aren't that considerate about it, the level of the rest of the population. But there were a few specific examples of specific individuals that I at least talked to a little bit. And it was so evil. Just, there isn't a more accurate word. It's so evil to watch a decent human being who was never even accused of threatening or hurting anybody. And they have to be away from their wife and their kids for years. Like a young kid from Jamaica. Met another guy who was in prison for like bringing in something for his friends. But if it's above this certain level, we're going to call that intent to distribute. And then we're going to stick you in a cage for this many months or this many years. And these people who are perfectly nice, no threat to anybody, had to wake up one day and be in a cage. And then they had to wake up the next day and still be in the cage. And then they had to wake up the next day and still be in the cage. And I could keep saying this about 4,000 fucking times for this sweet kid from Jamaica who is away from his family because Republicans don't want to zoom in and go, holy shit, that's evil. I probably shouldn't be supporting that. And most of the people there were there on drug charges because that's just what it is at the federal level. So at least have the balls to zoom in on what you advocate and admit to yourself what it really is, what it really entails, what the results really are, the effects on real people in the real world. And then if you have a soul or a conscience, you'll stop falling for authoritarian bullshit. Yeah, you'll still support the thing of, if somebody's attacking somebody, stop them by whatever means necessary. And if it's a guy with a badge stopping them, okay. If it's a guy without a badge stopping them, okay. I don't really care. In that moment, if like a rabid dog runs up and bites them, okay, stop them, that works. That's good for me. We can all zoom in on that and go, yep, we're okay with that. Because when you zoom in and see reality, then your conscience can actually make an informed decision and go, well, in that case, yeah, I want those people stopped from hurting that innocent victim. Yeah, me too. And to pretend that, no, you don't really, because you don't want 1 million people deported. That's stupid, that's dishonest, that's you not having the balls to zoom in on your own belief system to say what you actually condone. And it's amazing the number of people, well, then what would you do about, like, the illegal immigrants that come here and victimize people? Stop them by force, just like people who were born here victimizing people. Use force, any means necessary to stop them from victimizing innocent people. It's like these people, it's never occurred to them the possibility of, if you're going to use force, just use it against people who are actually hurting somebody else. And I'm going to end with this, see if I can do it without screaming. Libertarians are supposed to understand that. The whole concept of libertarianism is based on the non-aggression principle. You don't use violence against non-violent people. You only use defensive force to stop an aggressor from hurting somebody else. It's a very simple principle. I mean, there are areas where, well, did this count as a threat? And like, there are gray areas where you can nitpick whether it counts as aggression, but the overall principle is really damn simple. And to have supposed libertarians throw that out the window and start cheering for this vague euphemistic fluff, instead of zooming in and going, holy shit, what I just advocated is going to result in a bunch of perfectly decent people being victimized by authoritarian brutality, maybe I shouldn't do that. Yeah, maybe you fucking shouldn't, and maybe you should zoom in on the real world results of what you advocate. And if you don't dare to do that, it's because part of you already knows that if you zoom in, you're going to see that you've been a cheerleader for evil. So maybe fucking stop that.